Hey guys, thanks for coming in. We have a bit of a cumbersome show today, and today's episode hits at the very heart of what we stand for: the right to speak freely, question authority, and hold government accountable. I'm honored to be with my guest here, Adam Kokesh, who is a Iraq war veteran, a longtime civil rights activist, and a major influence in the First Amendment audit community. Really one of the fathers. But Adam is not here today just as an advocate. He's here as a man who was banned from YouTube, accused of violating their terms of service. So what really happened? Is this a case of content censorship to make sure everyone's safe? Or is this just a case of outright censorship of dissent? And what does this mean for other users who use social media to exercise their First Amendment rights? Thanks for being here, Adam.
Hey, I love you, DMA. That was awesome. I appreciate the thoughtful intro and the montage and all the formalities. I feel like you're about to start reading titles and pull up my Wikipedia page and all that shit.
I wanted to start out real serious.
Yeah. Well, no, and this is like
this is a big deal.
I want to get as serious as possible. But you know what? Okay, I want to start with this then. I had it somewhere I want to go to begin with, but you want to say about taking this seriously? I take it so seriously, understanding what they're trying to do to manipulate me, that I'm not even going to let them cause me to slip out of thoughtful response and lose my center and who I really am, to be reactionary, to be reactive to their action of just taking that whole channel. Like this happened Sunday. I mean, I found out from you as you were prepping for a show that we are prohibited from doing now because of the terms of the, you're allowed supposedly to host me on your YouTube channel for an interview, but what you are not allowed to do, setting this as the parameters, just make it clear that we are not intending to violate terms of service at all with this interview, that if you were helping me get around my ban, because it's not just that they took down my channel, is that I am personally by name banned from participating by having a YouTube channel that says you can't start another one or use a different channel, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And that's why you were looking at my content to bring in another commentary, almost nostalgic, learn from the old dude, kind of show. Yeah. And then as you were doing that, you were like, wait, hey, Adam, your YouTube channel's not there. Yeah. And for just quick background on that, YouTube was the center of my activism over the years. And I got in before Google bought YouTube, back when there was a golden age of independent media on the internet that is, if not done, at least coming to a close. You could depend on how you want to cut off golden age. But there's a time when the internet's power and potential was being realized before they, them, those, the big corporo, globo homo, corporate government conglomerate industrial military complex, the big they, them, those. I like Ernie Hancock's use of that term, the they, them, those, because even if you blame something on government and it's really corporations or acting through government or what, and if it's government, it might be actually, so just avoiding all that, they, them, those, the big assholes of the world, and I got my channel up to 200,000 subscribers, under fair terms. Up to that point, I thought it was YouTube as opposed to GovTube or whatever the fuck you want to call it now, right? And it was amazing. I mean, you remember all the beautiful things that came out during that period, like cultural touchstones, that it just isn't that place anymore. YouTube is a sad, distorted version of its former self. And what's sad about it is that it's still so commonly used that they have succeeded in making that the mainstream platform for sharing online video. Like people say, hey, well, you should make a YouTube video. Like it's it's built into the concept. It's so deep embedded in the psyche that is what it means to create and post a video on the internet. And so then when I hit 200,000 subs, the progress of my channel kind of stalled, and it was weird. It was like, and it didn't stall completely, but it started to flatline. And you're like, this could be a plateau. And I want to jump ahead and connect to why I think it's so important to speak of this. Man, now I can't see you. I want to see you the whole time. You can make people look at school. But and by the way, I just got to point out, I hope, don't let me get too off topic, but it's funny. You got the picture of me with when I had long hair, and then you have the most clean shaven picture that is of me on the internet in your opening montage, and makes me look so much younger.
You are such a young buck, dude. I actually literally put that together before. That's why I was running late. I like threw that together at the last minute. I was like, I got to come up with. I was going to play something. I can't play a video now. I had a cool intro.
Right,
but like, I can't play that. I don't want to get my channel deleted either. And I know exactly what you're talking about because I've been through the same thing. You know what I mean? I've actually had my channel shadow banned, and I didn't actually violate terms of service. But what happens is the people who my channel got reported from trolls that there's a lot of people, unfortunately, they just can't stand freedom. And so when I request,
we'll come back.
Okay,
put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. We're definitely going to come back because let me tie up some. I opened like a lot of different threads. I don't want to sound like I'm just starting sentences and not finishing them or whatever. But there's so. During that period, and like we're talking way back. Like, when did I start my YouTube channel?
2008. I think
I haven't even been active on it at all, and like deliberately so for 3 years. Like, I thought by not even logging into my YouTube account, I could at least like preserve it, like it wouldn't trigger anything else.
Yeah.
And I've been getting until Sunday, and Sunday you said, dude, I think your channel's gone. What's up? I looked at my email. It was 13 minutes before that I got that email that you showed on screen. But back to where, like that picture of me clean shaven almost. Philly Smokedown, as in Smokedown Prohibition. I don't even remember what year that was, but we're taking back like 2012-ish. And so I got out of the Marines. I used to tell the story this way. November 30, 2006, moved to DC, and ended up running away with the circus known as the Anti-War Movement and Iraq Veterans Against the War. And even during that time, I started a YouTube channel, but I wasn't like taking it too seriously until Adam versus the Man, radio show, TV show, then YouTube only, independent, after getting canceled for that. And so during this time, like I really focused on the YouTube channel, and I was able to crawl the subs up to 250, but I could tell even back then, like something's wrong, and one of the most, and I want to come back to this as a separate conversation topic, but pointing out with this experience that the manipulation of online information can sometimes have weirdly subtle, but hugely consequential effects. So the fact that they did it in the first censorship I experienced that way, I think was pretty subtle. I think it was more like a subtle shadow banning that just slowed the growth of my channel. The numbers, like I could still get viral videos out. I could still reach my regular audience, with daily production when we were doing Adam versus the Man that way as a daily news commentary show. But it's the like how much time did I spend at that point? Because I was a little naive. I mean, I still knew what was going on in the bigger picture of government and censorship, but I was naive enough that I fell for the psychological manipulation of no, your content just isn't as good as it used to be. And it's like, and I've experienced that so many, like that's the worst. Like that to me, like personally, I gotta admit, like that's like my own weakness, is that I have, a certain attachment even to that content. And that's why it was such a big deal for me when this happened Sunday. And I hope I'm not leaving too many, loose ends out here, jumping ahead to the present. But when I got this text message on Sunday from you, and then checked my email, it was like an out of the blue non-attachment test, and I passed. And this is like why right now I think it's important to put a smile on your face talking about this. It's important to like not lose your sense, to be able to laugh at evil. Really, like you're going to cower, you're going to take it seriously. No offense to you, mate. It was a good intro, but that's not the mood I want to have a conversation in. And I think of nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg's, methodology, school of thought, has been very influential to me. There's a 3-hour video on YouTube of a Marshall Rosenberg workshop that he gave for nonviolent communication, like a couple decades ago. It was before he passed away. May he rest in peace. Whatever he would want you to say by NVC, I don't even know. But he's got a 3-hour video that's like his best workshop. He's wearing a red turtleneck if you want to identify it or find the link if anybody else wants to. I highly recommend it. I have ripped the audio from that and listened to it at least half a dozen times. Before that, I watched the video at least 3 times. And still, every time I take in that material, I absorb something critically different. And DMA, one of the reasons it's so cool to talk to you about stuff like this is how you have been able to replicate uniquely a big part of what made my Man on the Street interviews truly powerful and unique as an application of the Socratic method. And that requires not only like the emotional self-control to be able to engage and stay chill and ask questions, but to be thinking on your feet, asking those questions, and ask the questions in such a way that you're not triggering the other person or giving them an excuse to sort of wiggle out of accountability for what they said, even, or wiggle out of accountability for the contradictions in their reasoning. If you don't actually accurately pull out of them in irrefutable language, I want to say code because my head's all about AI right now. But if you don't pull that out of them precisely, you can't hold them to that. If you say, well, what do you think of Trump? I like him. Well, you shouldn't like him. And then it's a stupid argument. It's a back and forth. But you use precise language. Do you think Trump XYZ or whatever specific criteria? Then you can ask and you can educate. You can ask the questions that precisely cut to the heart of the logical fallacies or contradictions behind, most mainstream political opinions. And that's, I think, the greater value in a lot of my videos was being able to expose that in someone, to like use them. And people love watching, my victims squirm as I did this. But one of the reasons I was able to execute that conversational strategy was because I have nonviolent communication, somewhat built in at this point. And I still discover something new every time. And the last time I listened to the Marshall Rosenberg nonviolent communication workshop, the thing I picked up that really has stuck with me and is really relevant now is the principle: never give anyone the power to make you either rebel or submit.
Wow.
And when I got the email, when I checked after your text Sunday, that was the first thing that came to mind, because I was tempted to like jump back into full rebellion mode. I was, I'm gonna repeal, or I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna raise holy hell, and I'm gonna expose Google as engaging in censorship. Everybody fucking knows, like what. That censorship on the internet is a thing. I think what people don't realize, and maybe we can get into this too, is just really how toxic and destructive the effects are. Like they do it because it works. The greater evils that they are trying to get away with and effectively get away with, the limits are increased when we let them use propaganda, when we let them use censorship, when we let them use emotional manipulation, when we let them use false framing, when we let them take advantage of our inclinations to be reactionary instead of responsive, to be emotional instead of rational. And yes, I think we talk about emotions and masculinity and all that, but I'm a deeply emotional person in the sense that I understand my emotional motivations to love and to do well in the world and to contribute. And in the moment, I'm very attuned to my emotions, and that I can listen to them. I can hear the message from my subconscious, from greater intellectual place than my single momentary point of consciousness, and I can listen to them as signals and not lose my center. It's not that I don't feel fear or anger or remorse, but it's that I figured out how to use the nonviolent communication process internally so effectively that it's basically automatic. And so this was a big test. It was a really big test. Oh, dude, your life's work, essentially.
Yeah.
Boom, just gone. And now I'm backed up on Odyssey. So it's not like the videos are actually lost and I have the files if it was worth chasing that. But it's the historical record that my channel represented. That it was all the views, the dates, all the comments, all the great conversations that happened in the comments sections. A little sidebar just to illuminate something for the audience that I know DMA is aware of, but especially in the age of AI, but even without it, just with the budget of the NSA, the conversations you see on the internet aren't real. There are trolls and plants fucking everywhere. I know it sounds paranoid to say it like that, but I'm just drawing the contrast for myself even to that golden age when comment sections were freaking amazing. And then YouTube became notorious right away, like not right away, but after Google took over, for being like the toxic bowels of the internet, right? Or all sorts of ways. It was like making fun of YouTube comment sections for being toxic was cliche pretty quickly, and that's not representative of humanity. And one of the worst things that we do when we allow this manipulation to our head is just to darken the world. Like, it's not as bad as it looks, it's especially if you doom scroll, you read the news. And I was just watching an interview with this historian who's very attuned to this, and he said that one of the ways that we are conditioned is by taking advantage of like the social validation. We are more inclined to judge our worldview or make decisions based on what we see other people doing rather than thinking for ourselves. So it's very easy to manipulate what it looks like everybody else is doing on the internet. It's a new, different form of propaganda. And, makes my heart break for humanity. I think we got this amazing technology that's still doing amazing things. I am not in any way like a doomer or pessimistic about the internet or AI or anything like that. But my heart breaks to think like we got this amazing technology and we are so falling short of realizing its potential because we have allowed they, them, those to use it as a tool for manipulation rather than, keeping it as a tool for the people, for liberation, for education. And DMA, at the beginning, you said what we stand for. And, speaking for yourself or the audit community, perhaps, of, free speech, government accountability, it was so eloquent.
It was questioning authority.
Right, questioning authority. Yeah, no, so that's still important. But I want to make this conversation, more about looking forward, because I quit public life 3 years ago. Only kind of dabbled in reentry recently, announcing that I've declared my sovereignty and seceded from the United States here on my 10-acre homestead. For a little bit of the stuff I'm doing with my new business, Engineered Empathy, I'm sitting right here in front of my bench that took over my dining room table space, where I have my my CNC to make fun stuff like this, and I'm designing a case right now to be an unlosable, crush-proof, waterproof, wearable case for cochlear implant devices, because I had an amazing experience with a friend who lost his and then found it, and I'm creating the device like for that community based on his needs, and designing something for mass manufacturing, actually, which is like really new for me and an amazing experience that if it wasn't for AI, I wouldn't even attempt. So I don't know, maybe before, moving on to what I want to see and paint a picture of for, understanding the activism tactics of the past being adapted to the future. I feel like I'm in charge of the interview now. Is there anything you want to say about all that random shit I just covered and shoehorned into that whole rant?
Get it all out, dude. It was a good flow. No, but I see what you're saying, man. Like, well, first of all, you do have a very good skill of being able to get people to think about things, like when you're doing your interviews. And like you said, through the non-aggression principle, and you have like this way about you, how you're able to question people's beliefs and really get them to think about it. Like it's not just an argument, like you said, back and forth. And so I want to commend you on that. And I wish we could play some, because that's really what we're supposed to be doing right now, is playing some of those.
Yeah, right. It really explains like why I'm hated by the right people. And I love this. Like, I got to get a shout out to Owen Benjamin, the comedian, Papa Bear Terrier, doing his thing on his homestead. He's really been inspiring to me watching some of his stuff on social media. But he had a post recently like, I don't care that I lose revenue talking shit online. I don't care if I trigger you. I got a homestead and made myself food independent and got chickens just so I could keep calling you a faggot on the internet. The last part was the actual quote. Oh, that was clear. But he said, none of you appreciate the commitment to art that this represents. And I'm like, you know what? I man after my own heart, because I think I've done not a perfect job, but a pretty good job of staying true to that and staying true to myself. And the reason people hate me and why I love being hated by the right people is that I'm like a spotlight, and I can, in a quick conversation, reach the bottom of your fucking soul and pull it out and make you look at it. Unless or if I got a camera pointed on you and you don't want to answer basic polite questions, you'll look like a dick or an idiot, and that's I think why you saw too in a lot of my videos, I would have conversations that would normally be extremely contentious, like that would be impossible without at least one person or someone leading the conversation with the premises that I brought to it and the approach. But you saw a lot of people like thank me afterwards or shake hands and be polite afterwards, even when it was, again, like to the false image, the darkening of the world that is portrayed. Like Shane Gillis, great comedian I've been enjoying lately too. Has this bit about America being more divided than ever and making fun of this concept. And it's like, wait, America's more divided than ever because we talk shit on Facebook? We had a civil war at one point, right? Like we're getting along really fucking good, historically speaking. And that even that, country torn apart, it's so easy to manipulate. It's so easy to, falsely represent conflict and division. The other thing, the interview, I'm sorry I forget his name, with the historian was pointing out, is that shit. Now I'm trying to keep track of too many things. Oh, the Facebook algorithm. This was the thing. The interviewer was asking him if he thought it was intentional, like how evil is Mark Zuckerberg, right? And the historian was trying to say, well, it's sort of an unintended consequence of them just because they and I'm all about like, hello, fucking now, I follow these people. Let me control my news feed. Why are you controlling my news feed? Like that should have been something we as users of Facebook from the beginning should have put our foot down and said like, nah, that's how manipulation happens. That's how you control my worldview. And there's a lot of nefarious shit now. Every big tech company has backdoors, government guns to their head in a dozen different ways. But the historian was saying it wasn't intentional on Zuckerberg's part, or people like in that role, Dorsey at Twitter, all MySpace, everybody who's been a part of that role of designing an algorithm to create a social media feed. They just designed it to be engaging. And what he was pointing out was the psychological value in terms of actual mind control. Again, even if you say it's just to make them engaging so that you spend more time on Facebook, you see more ads, no shit, that it's a honey, honey, honey poison kind of strategy of things that trigger fear or anger or resentment, right? You know, you had like this list of negative emotions that you go like, that's how it's actually fucking with your head if you let it, right? And now it's combined with ads too. But what they would do is not just, it's like as you're scrolling, something nice, something pleasant, something beautiful, something that makes you comment out of anger, you know, and therefore you go back to it. So it's like dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit reaction. And after that reaction, if you let it put you in a reaction response psychologically, you will crave that next dopamine hit even more. And so it's that leads you back. So it's like the disease or the cause of the disease, the distortion, is masquerades as the cure as well, while just sucking you into the next trigger.
Right.
And then the interviewer was like, yeah, it may have been unintentional, but they kept it going. You know, like,
yeah.
right. So maybe, you know, again, I'm very cautious to ascribe individual blame. Although, what was it, Carol Wojcicki, who was the CEO of YouTube, was like died of a heart attack from being over vaccinated, or who knows, whose son had died. Like, you know, mother having to watch a son die shouldn't ever happen.
But hold on, let's talk real quick about the actual ban, because I want the viewers to know kind of what's going on with that specifically before we get too deep into this other stuff.
Sure, right. Now, yeah, because I want to I want to wrap up everything that's sort of looking backwards.
So what reason, if any, did they give you for these terms of service?
Yeah, okay. So, well, the emails that I used to get like every week or two taking videos down, they're almost all medical misinformation. And I'm pretty sure this was podcasts that I did during the you know, the thing with the masks and the vaccines that shall not be named, because we're dancing around their bullshit for this particular stream while talking about all the more important shit. But the email telling me that my channel was deleted said self-harm. And it doesn't say, what does it say? You have it handy, right? I mean, I could. So, violations of our self-harm policy. And what's funny about that, there's so many, just that in itself. Violations of our self-harm policy. They don't tell you what the violation was. They don't tell you it was for portraying self-harm, for encouraging self-harm, for whatever. But it's like, if you read that, one of the comments on my Facebook post about this that I thought was so rich was, yeah, because when someone is talking about harming themselves, the best thing to do is shut them up and ignore them. You know, like, it's so inherently evil and irrational. But in terms of like self-harm, you know, I did go and read the policy briefly. I didn't want to. I thought if I spend the next 2 hours, like instantly, I'm gonna fucking get my head in this email and regulations and decide how to appeal. And I'm like, I'm being reactionary. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna stay chill.
Because they won't tell you what it is that you violated. They'll just refer you to the policy because they want you to self-censor yourself, right?
Yeah, they want it. That's a really good point. It is intentionally vague to make people actually draw the line on themselves much more restrictively than they have to enforce ever. And that's really sick. And it's a really twisted approach, because you know they're doing it at least knowingly, if not intentionally. But it's imposing a very odd psychological burden on creators all across YouTube, even the ones who are mainstream and they're like I think I still use YouTube for right now. I watch a lot of videos about AI because the latest news on AI is not something that really triggers their censorship. But I know that even that, in order for my understanding to be complete, has to be balanced with sources that aren't subject to that self-censorship. Because what if there's something happening in AI that I'm not learning about because all of the content creators decided, oh, to talk about how AI is going to make government obsolete in a few years, you know, or whatever, bring that to reality. That's a little too, I'll leave that out. And again, it's really sad. Like, I use YouTube for primarily in videos for like how-to videos, as a homesteader, as a woodworker, as a tinkerer, now as a product developer, you know, doing my first big project. it's really good for that, and AI is really useful for that. And I think those are areas that you can say are kind of benign, but even there, you have to be aware of it. And how many of those there's at the same time as there's all this negative emotion being inflared or being intentionally inflamed, and the darkening of the world, there's also a pacification effect, because all the woodworking channels that I watch, how many of those dudes, and by the way, I love Wrangler Star because like he injects some like really intense political shit, but I don't think he's on YouTube anymore. The image that the public gets is that, oh, all these woodworkers only have nice things to say about politicians and government, and only have nice things to say about how society is going these days. And if you got them in a place where they were uncensored, it would present a totally different reality. But the viewers then, and really those guys as well, the whole idea of revolution or resistance or even social movements being a collective thing is robbed from all of us, because it's like our vision is tamped down, and then we tamp down our own beliefs, and knowledge and understanding and expression of that implicitly. And what I think of, you as a brother in activism, a big part of it is just like, nah, I know that dude's going to tell the truth. Like we can censor our message this way or that way for this platform or leave it out. Like, I know you're going to want to get to the deeper issue. You're not going to be, you don't just think for yourself. You're confident in your conclusions without social proof. And that is so important these days. So maybe jumping ahead, but are we really about fighting government and freedom of speech and blah, blah? Are we really about advancing humanity to live better based on the latest technology and philosophy and understanding of the world? And in that case, maybe everything we've been doing in the past is kind of like, trying to steer the Titanic or something. And it's too late. And there's a different mode that's called for that challenges, I think, to get to, what really are those deeper principles and motivations. Because like for me, a big part of what I've come to realize in the last just less than 48 hours at this point, that's kind of crazy. My YouTube channel has been gone for 47 hours. No, what is it actually?
It might have been gone for longer if we weren't doing the show, because I was literally going to your channel to look at a video. It's like, oh, which one am I going to watch?
Hold
and then
on,
all of a sudden it was gone.
Yeah, no, I want to come. That's part of, let's wrap up what's happened. I want to talk about how it may have happened, but just to complete the thought about looking forward, just over the last 44 hours, I've come to affirm some deeper principles for myself in a very critical way. Like, don't fight the old when you can build the new, which is paraphrasing of Buckminster Fuller. I think a lot of libertarians and activists really struggle with that idea, because
I do.
The fighting the old is fighting the current, and the current status of the world is that there are a lot of innocent people dying at the hands of government. There are a lot of people suffering financially, unnecessarily at the hands of government. The psychological distress, financial distress, the physical harm, the poisoning of the environment. I could keep going, but like it is hard when you are really doing this, and again, challenging to get to those deeper motivations that we share. When you really care about human suffering, and that's really like why. Well, again, coming out of the anti-war movement, it was that really like set the frame for the rest of my activism. Like, oh, there are motherfuckers dying in Iraq right now because the system looks like the American people have no fucking clue what's actually happening, and I'm in a position to say just my story and maybe save some lives that way. And it's very tempting to fall into a sort of savior complex when you're like, am I the only one who sees all this fucking suffering, and you don't care? But then in line with don't fight the old, build the new, I don't want to be rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic was the saying I was looking for earlier. Maybe it's if you are resisting or submitting, you have already lost. You know, is what Marshall Rosenberg would say. And if you are committed to building the new but not fighting the old, can you really like let go of that human suffering that's like right all around us and say, you know, I have to, you know, I have to target my efforts. I have to be more thoughtful. And I don't have all the answers, and I don't pretend to or ever have. And I don't think we will ever have the perfect answer to that question, which is, am I doing the best thing I can do right now as an activist to serve humanity, to reduce suffering, to contribute to the world? It's someone it's always going to be subjective. So, but
it's very difficult.
That's what I'm looking for.
It's very difficult too, man. You have a good outlook because, you know, like YouTube does have like a monopoly on this service basically, because there's other platforms, but you don't get the same reach. So
right,
you get this identity, so, like my whole, like you said, this is my life's work, you know, like all of these comments and all of this work that I put in, it's just gone. So it's very difficult to move on from something like that.
Yeah. Well, so let's go back to what I said earlier for an understanding of how it happened. But I'll restate what I said to set the frame for this whole conversation, this part of the conversation. In that, another principle from nonviolent communication is there's no such thing as guilt or fault or blame. There's only responsibility and opportunity. You know, you have two games you can play in life. You can play who's right, or you can play let's make life awesome. You don't get to play both at the same time, and you really only get to. That's it. What are you doing? You're either making life awesome, or you're playing who's right. And I don't want to ever play who's right again. And especially in politics, there's a lot of temptation to do that. I think a lot of libertarians lose all credibility when they forget that we are fundamentally different from Democrats or Republicans or conservatives or liberals, and try to even engage in the conversation on their terms, as opposed to saying like, hey, let's apply ethics to politics. How about that? You know, the non-aggression principle, no shit. But it's we are led into another trap if we make it about blame. If we make it about, you know, individuals doing bad things as opposed to, you know, moving humanity forward. And so when we're talking about these big issues, it's especially important because we live in a world where clearly we could say human relationships are saturated with coercion, with the threat of force, right? All of our relationships are, there's a gun in the room, you know, an invisible gun that's the gun of government, that is, if you do certain things that they, them, those don't like, there are going to be physical consequences for you. And we really sort of, you know, that's been hidden from us. That's the great illusion of statism, is they have convinced us of democracy and blah, you know, all of these fantasies about government that keep people attached. So when we talk about like Google did this or YouTube did this, that at least that's abstracting it to, you know, the institution that is the mechanism. But to my band specifically, I've had a lot of people throw different theories at me over the last couple of days, and you know, one of them, well, you've given me a few of them, so I'm going to try to attribute, but it could have been one hater on the internet using a bot farm to flag my videos, right? Okay. It could have been one FBI agent whose job is to like keep YouTube scrubbed for the AI who's about to scrape it all for the internet. You know, it could be a team at the NSA. It could be an actual YouTube employee whose supervisor is an FBI double agent, if you will. Because we saw that from the Twitter files. And as much as I have issues with Elon Musk, I'd thank him or at least be appreciative of that. So maintaining that psychological frame, I think, is really important, you know, and also the flip side of this is the check on ego for yourself. There's no blame, there's no guilt, there's no shame. Well, guess what? There's no credit either. You're not special.
Who do you think was the one that actually has the authority to actually delete the channel? It's got to be somebody in higher ups, right?
Not necessarily.
They like
No,
reviewed it.
no. Let me give you because I haven't appealed yet because
Right. And that's another question. Are you going to appeal it?
Okay. So, am I going to appeal it? I don't know. Probably.
And how long do you have to appeal it?
But hold on. Like I haven't
You
even
only have
looked
a
yet.
few
Because
days.
if they said you have a week and then it's gone, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not playing your game. Fuck you. And the primary reason is to not be reactionary. You know, to maintain my frame. But I should probably look. You know, if it's only a few days, I should know if I'm going to do that because that may be the right course to just put in a. It's funny. It's like my life work on the line. At least you know that representation of it, and I'm going to get on their little online forum and be like, "Fuck you, self harm. What the fuck?" You know, as opposed to like a well composed appeal. But the one reason specifically not to just knee jerk appeal right away is like I've not been making money off of this. You know, I've been demonetized and shadow banned in so many other ways. It's not getting me any money off YouTube, which is like really sad because like there were a lot of like looking at the original metrics and compensation and all that, like back in the golden age, assuming it would never go away, like really before Google bought YouTube. You know, I really thought, oh, like I'm building for retirement here. And it's
Yeah.
like none
Yeah,
of
it
that.
can be gone in the blink of an eye, man. You never know. You can't put all your eggs in one basket.
Okay,
I've learned that too.
To your suggestion that it had to be someone higher up or someone of a certain authority, I'm saying not necessarily. And here's a scenario, and it's I want to like even limit the time that we spend on all this speculation because the answer is ultimately you just don't fucking know. So you can't blame anybody because you don't know who's being who's coercing who, and you know what where's the initiator of this, and that really denies that it's almost a broader sociological phenomenon right now of coercive government. But it could be that at some point in higher level negotiations between who knows who in government and who knows who at Google, they were like, all right, we'll let you do this with YouTube, but you got to give us the backdoor password. And here's the back, you got to create a backdoor user interface where you know our FBI agents can log in and do this, this, and this, and YouTube just goes, okay, fine. And so someone high up tells a developer, a programmer at Google that they can trust to do just that and not talk about it. That's they use a lot of NDAs and stuff like that. And then some supervisor at the FBI or the NSA, or maybe they created their own thing. But then maybe that portal and that password falls down to some low-level corrupt FBI agent, like we've seen, like in the Ross Ulbricht case. Thank God he's out. As we've seen in like Operation Fast and Furious. And I don't try to be an expert, so I don't know if those are the best two examples, but just COINTELPRO in general, like we know that oftentimes junior FBI agents, CIA agents can scale up like their negative influence, and if you see what they're getting caught for, imagine what they're not getting caught for. And I think that explains a significant chunk of it. So DMA ultimately it's fuck, we don't know, and like that's just part of the terrain. Sorry, like because I could blame intellectual property as a precept for all of this. Government policies with corporatism, the human tendency to accept this kind of manipulation, to fall for this kind of shit, to not stand up to check. I agree after reading 5 pages of an end user license agreement instead of going like, hold on, you want me to read 5 pages of legal shit before I buy your toaster oven? No thanks. I see what you're trying to do there. I'm going to go to a competitor, because you could take it all the way back to that, right? That if the dawning of the legalese age for modern governments, where signing user agreements or license agreements or whatever the fuck they would call it, it's like long documents you just check I agree or just sign, or even like car purchase contracts, car lease contracts, or mortgages. And it's like, no, if you can't deal with me straight up, I'm not going to deal with you. We didn't do that. Like as a society, no, we let it creep in, and this is where we are because the temptation of that technology is so great, or those financial resources, the access to those systems. And we basically just said, you know, that's our bigger deal with the devil that we're in the middle of right now. And we've got to negotiate our way out of this.
Like, based on the fact that you haven't even published a video in like years, I think, right?
So 3 years. That's
so
yeah, almost 3 years.
Do you think that based on that fact, and they terminated your channel, do you think that other activists are also at risk of having their channel deleted too?
Yes, and I don't care. You know, and I'll explain why. Although this is kind of jumping ahead, but let me do the first part first here. Yeah, this is just part of the terrain you have to accept. That this is the internet age that we live in. That for better or for worse, humanity got the internet. At the point in history, we were still doing this government thing. So government's going to be on the internet. And there is, I think we've touched on a few of the things here already that are unique about that as terrain for an activist. You know, I go back to, like, I started with Iraq Veterans Against the War in 2007. Shit, you know, like 15 years ago. Wait, 18 years ago. Shit, excuse me. I'm so old I can't even do math. But yeah, so I kind of remember what it was like to be an activist before the internet. I mean, we had the internet. I had a blog, but the internet was still a tiny fraction in terms of relevance to the broader American political conversation at that point. And I've seen and lived through and been a part of like that whole arc that I see, at least, of the development and the corruption of the internet. And I still think that overall it's a huge positive force for good. But yeah, once you step into that, you got to know there's some different things about the terrain. And one of the things is you might be censored without knowing it. You might be shadow banned. You might never know why or how, or you might run into walls of censorship that there's just no way around. It's not you can't fight City Hall. It's that the dependence on platforms themselves is it carries this inherent weakness or vulnerability in the age of the internet. And I want to give a shout out too, while I'm thinking about it, to Pavel Durov, the owner of Telegram. I'm a big fan of Telegram, as you know. And by the way, I keep my ringer off all the time. Nobody interrupts me without a scheduled phone call. Like, that's been my policy for a long time. I love that about not being a public figure anymore, not having to be so responsive and reactive, but also just that slowing down of my conversation, you know, taking all that kind of urgency out of it. But Pavel Durov with Telegram, you know, he's done a great job as best he can in the world that we live in to create a secure, private, encrypted online communications platform. And it's an everything communications platform. By the way, I don't pretend to know or act as if everything that I say on Telegram is secure. Nothing that goes through this device, because this device, what I'm saying applies to every device that is actively connected to the internet at all today. Sorry. The only way to have even just secure online encrypted communication, just even email, is to have air-gapped offline machines doing the encryption and decryption. If you don't have that, there's always a backdoor, there's always a way in. And even if there's not, you know what they do? Oh, we got a warrant to raid and seize all electronics devices. You know, so like that may be the backstop to the system, because if they you ask for other content creators, like, are they at risk? Like, duh, you know, like, I don't have to tell you that. And if I assume anybody watching kind of knows that that's, you know, part of what you deal with today. And who was the guy with the squirrel in New York? Remember the squirrel? The New York State Health Department went to a dude's house. He was making adult videos. He was funny, but he was a squirrel daddy. Was it Peanut the squirrel? It was like before the election. Oh my God, now I feel silly. I don't remember the name of the squirrel. But they said it was a health violation. They raided their home to seize a fucking squirrel. You know, there's no depth these people won't stoop to. And it's, in terms of the enforcement, just being unthinking, boots on the ground, and the string pullers who control the system, obviously being more about control than about harmony and servicing people. Yeah. So, or serving people. And so that you know, yeah, that's part of the terrain. And there's so, like, I think you and I could do like a 8-hour video series instructing people just like how to know the terrain of being a content creator on the internet and explaining in the background like all these, but like I don't want to do that. I don't give a fuck. And I don't really even care. Like, it's part of the reality, it's part of the value of what you're doing today as a content creator is using the internet, using that technology to improve the human conversation, to enlighten people, to make people's lives better. Even just the material benefit that I get from, watching how-to videos is creating a value in the world that wouldn't exist without that technology, that essentially empowers me and everybody else who's using it this way to be more functionally independent, to be more of someone who can create value outside of the system that can be taxed and manipulated. So, but the real reason I don't care is for one, looking backwards, like I accept that that's part of what I was up against. And I accept that today, if you want to take that on, that's something that you're up against. And, fucking more power to you, go slay that dragon, but you're not going to. So I'm not hopeful that is ever going to be overcome in this age of the human experience, our story as a species, and this chapter of technology and the internet before artificial intelligence. And I think we have started what I would call the asymptote, what might be the singularity or the transition to the singularity. Who the fuck cares what terminology you use? But I think that there is a way we have to look at building the new rather than fighting the old, because we have been not only given this tool of AI, which has its corruption, certainly. And I've been playing with its limits. I've been doing, a little research on my own with certain experimental probing questions, trying to get it to say naughty words. No, not a little deeper than that. And we've all been given this tool to create immense value. And I feel like I've been aware of this. I know I've been aware of this like since GPT-3, a year ago. And I'm using it right now for a lot of the technical stuff in product development, CNC work. Maybe I'll show you all with the camera turned around later. You can see my workbench. But compared to, what we were doing as activists, or what I was doing as an activist, was mostly in the vein of grab people by the collar and wake them up. Mm-hmm. And the other reason I that might not be relevant anymore, and why I don't care, I don't think YouTube channels are going to ever be what they were as an effective tool for activism, because we're going to evolve so far past that and make government as a whole obsolete sooner than we're going to even fix that. Like now the pace of new technology and new systems being implemented and just the turnover is so rapid. It's more than ever rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic to say, I arrested a judge. Oh, good for you, Trump. Yeah. Or I educated, no offense, because you do this. I've seen you do it brilliantly. And the way I look back at how I did it brilliantly, that I appreciate for both of us. Yeah. But really, compared to, I used AI to create a new understanding for humanity. I created a new product that is going to alleviate a massive chunk of pain and suffering for cochlear implant users. Holy shit. I'm almost embarrassed that I was aware of chatbots with GPT-3 a year ago, and I'm now only starting to get engaged at this deeper intellectual level and understanding what it represents. But you're going to come back to me and be like, oh, I enlightened a public employee today. I put a cop in his place. I got a bad cop arrested. Even that, I'm like,
it's not going to do anything in the end. I mean, like I learned from you, you say, government can't follow their own rules. So it doesn't matter how much case law you create. It doesn't matter. Nothing's going to change. It's basically, I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just trying to expose it at this point.
All right. So before we move on to looking forward, is there anything else about all the looking back or any loose ends? I know I left so many thoughts unfinished in that whole.
There probably is, but in the comment section, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask Adam about his YouTube channel, why don't you tell us a little bit about what do you plan on doing? I know you've kind of been inactive as an activist for a while, but do you plan on doing any type of activism in the future, or any type of other platforms or ideas that you have moving forward?
It almost begs me to redefine the word itself, activism, because it's used so many different ways, and I've used it different ways. But I consider, in a way, everything that I do, engaging with the world conscientiously beyond, my 10 acres and my family and my dogs, as a form of activism. And maybe that's unnecessarily or unhelpfully inclusive, but even the business engineered empathy by creating something that could be patented and not patenting it, because I rejected the entire concept of intellectual property as a coercive government racket. Is that activism? Does that make the whole business activism? I don't know. And I saw my website up is thegardenofreedom.com. That's why, King of Gardenia. I actually formally seceded from the United States right before the election last year, with notices to the State Department, the governor of Arizona, the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors, and the United Nations. And, provided the appropriate documentation saying, well, by the same exact authority that the founders created the United States, I have created my own microstate. Come at me, bro. And more importantly, in a sense, I had already created that in reality here. As you know, my fence has successfully kept out FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, Secret Service agents, and Yavapai County Sheriff's deputies. It's working pretty well. And more or less, my sovereignty here is already respected even before declaring independence. There are things I do in my community that for other people's privacy and specifics I don't want to talk about, but just building stuff for neighbors, being helpful, and things like that. And honestly, when you say activism in the future, I don't know, and that's why I was excited to have this conversation with you without it being just about my old work. And we get to look forward more. And if you really think about what is it that I wanted to do, back to your introduction, that when I was critical of, and then you said, we're about free speech and holding government. We're not about holding government accountable. What a fucking waste of time. Really?
Yeah.
Is that really one of your core principles, bro? Again, I'm almost more making fun of your semantics, because I know you're with me on the meaning here, right? I'm not trying to poke you too bad. But that the deeper value there, what's the deeper value? It's justice. We are, I've always said, I've been motivated by a deep-seated sense of injustice. I see injustice in the world. I want to do something about it. And then, if you abstract that in a libertarian anarcho-capitalist economic analysis sense, you go, well, providing justice services for free, it's well, in the bigger activism sense, yeah, I got sucked into that because I saw that's, when there's lives on the line, I don't try to save someone's life because I expect that I'm going to be compensated, right? And not only is that whole, I hope I'm not unfairly denigrating the value of everything that was, a part of my activism or your activism by looking for the new way forward or to do something that's more relevant, because that's the thing. I knew, when I quit activism, quit public life 3 years ago, part of it was just being so discouraged, facing all the shadow bans over and over and being this isn't working.
Yep.
I'm putting string here. This, nah. By the way, there were a lot of dick jokes I was just tempted to make about pushing string. I'm just but what I said at the time was, you can't see the whole battlefield with a sword in front of your face. So I was able to zoom out and get that context and go, okay, I can see now this battle, these tactics are not working. This is a tough thing for a lot of us to admit.
Well, I think a lot of people are just, like you said, trying not to argue, or, I educated a public employee today or whatever. It's I think that
self-soothing
some
advice.
people, like, there's so many people that are against what we do, right? Like you talk about the trolls and stuff. I think that a lot of people, they just, the government knows that people are easily manipulated. Human beings are just followers by nature, right? And so they're so indoctrinated that, government's here for the good. They're here to protect you. That some people incarnated on this earth, I believe, just to be in the 3D. They don't want, they weren't meant to wake up. Like you said, my job was to wake people up. Well, some people you just can't wake up. You know what I mean? They're never going to, they didn't want to, they're not supposed to. There's only a few of us that will. Like, we're the minority. And
I'm about as
a lot of them are
disconnected
just
from
non-playing
gamer.
characters, I feel like.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yes. Oh, yeah. That's I'm so glad you didn't let me cut you off there. I am, because I'm as disconnected from the gamer community culture as you could possibly be. I've never been into video games in any way or been connected with that, except tiny bit as a kid. Mario Kart. Yeah.
Yes.
Not even Mario Kart specifically, but anyway. So the NPC term, like, I want to use it as often as possible. It's like the only thing that I know of I'm taking from, gamer culture. But understanding what a non-player character is in a video game and going like, that's what you are. It's such a brilliant term, and it captures that. I'm really glad you went this way, because I kind of, where I'm going with this begs this sort of demographic analysis or understanding. One metric that I keep thinking about, I read a study, I think it was a few years ago, but just before COVID. And you can look this up. 85% of Americans, or 85% of people, just don't set goals for themselves. You sit down, population, just go, hey, do you have any, what are your goals right now? Any goals in life? Oh, I don't have any. It's 85%. If you don't have goals in life, someone else is going to have some goals for you. And it's going to be suck their dick. It's going to be to work for them. It's going to be to shut up and pay your taxes. And it's going to be to suffer for their benefit. And if you don't like does that mean like the other 85% aren't worth saving, or aren't, it's not possible to wake them up? And for anybody watching, listening, I hope this just motivates you to cherish your goals and be more thoughtful about them. It's not just because otherwise your identity is based on their labels or your past work, and again, to the activists watching this, it's a bit of a psychological feat. I'm calling you to perform here. It is. I'm not saying it's easy, because a lot of you have identity tied up in your activism. I certainly did. I'm the guy who XY, that doesn't matter what it is, because it's virtue signaling, and it's trying to take credit for shit in the past, as opposed to prove what you can do in the future. Is that what those numbers represent? And then what's the implication for activism in the future?
Yep. Yeah, it's like a big giant test that they did to see how many people will comply, right? Like when we enforce martial law, right, and we take everyone to the FEMA camps, how many people are going to resist? You know what I mean? That's kind of the way I looked at that whole situation too.
So looking back for yourself, or what you see happening, I want to take advantage of what you have as knowledge and data points ready in your head, being more connected to the activist community and certainly the audit community today. Do you feel there's any activism being done that is significantly moving the needle of public opinion, or getting a significant number of people, a demographic perhaps, to actually think for themselves? Is there anything that meets that standard that I'm suggesting?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's small, it's moving very slowly, but yeah, there are people that are being awakened, like when people watch your videos or watch my videos, a lot of times people don't realize that their rights are being violated until they understand. Like I say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. So this education, it's entertainment and it's education at the same time. So when I started watching your videos, and then that led me into audits and stuff like that, and mostly was your stuff, because there's not really like a father of First Amendment audits, right? Everyone has their speculations, but it's kind of
I'm more like the crazy uncle than
well, it's kind of like First Amendment audits is kind of like the car, like a vehicle. Like it was invented by 6 people at the same time, right? No one really has the exact, who really started it.
Right.
And so like when I was watching your videos, you use a verbatim the same terminology that all of the OG First Amendment auditors use and that we all still use today. So I think that you, like, arguably are the father, right? And it's very clear to me that at
You
least the
are
people that
father.
started First Amendment auditing, like
Right,
they
wait,
were
wait,
influenced
hold
by
on.
you, right? They were inspired
like
by
a
you
lot
because they use the same terminology. So, but what I'm saying is, I think that we're definitely still the minority. You know what I mean? And so,
good,
is
because
it
I
ever
thought
going
you
to
were
get to
gonna
the
hit me
point
with
where we
child
can
support
convince
payments or
everyone?
something.
Yeah, you owe me child support. But I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where, you know, we have enough people. I don't know. It only takes, you know, 3%, I guess, or something like that. But, you know, I feel like there's just too many people that are just, they'll never get it. They don't get it. I mean, even my own family, they don't get it. You know, no one thinks that we're doing anything good. They think that we're just here to create a problem. And like I say, it's a very narcissistic trait for people to blame the victim, which is a lot of times what happens. You know, like even in your videos, when you're trying to talk to these cops and being nice to them, people in the comment section, oh, you're just there to create a conflict and let him do his job. And it's like, dude, he was being totally nice and respectful. You know, you're just such a bootlicker that, you know, you should never do anything to a cop, just obey them without question. So I don't know. I don't have any hope that it's going to be any time in the near future, but I do think that we are evolving to be more peaceful, you know, just like you say, and eventually will come to, you know, like aliens are looking down on us and, you know, they're thinking, because we think we're so advanced and so technologically advanced, but the aliens that are looking down at us are like, damn, look at these humans, how primitive they are. They have governments, they have rulers over them, and they think they're free at the same time.
Okay, so all this being said, I think I can point to a key principle guiding even this like demographic understanding, and it's that, because I've known this for a long time, but I haven't quite ever put it together like this until, you know, quitting public life and stepping back. But when I was able to step back from the battlefield and see the whole battle, and I could see how a lot of the shit that we are doing as activists in general is really futile. And hey, I'm all for your self-expression being activism. I'm not even imposing. I'm suggesting a standard for myself and for people like DMA who want to be like, our activism is not self-indulgent. It's of service. You know, there are things about it that are deeply gratifying, that are indulgent. There are components of that. We can't pretend, like when I make artwork in activism, like, you know, the Freedom book cover, or, you know, design for a flyer or a poster or a banner on a website. Like, yeah, that's expressive. But even then, you know, it's framed by being of service to humanity, thanks, in the greatest way possible. And so what I realized when I got back and saw the battlefield was like, it's not a battle. It's the progress of humanity, the evolution of humanity. There is a present problem of injustice, but even there, we can have a bigger impact on future cases than immediate cases. And that's really tough, you know, because I don't want to let that go. I don't want to let go of, like, no, there are people suffering, like right now. There are people who are dying in wars that don't have to happen. But even that, you got to step back and look at the bigger strategy of, if I am always putting out fires, or, you know, playing whack-a-mole strategically, am I missing the bigger picture? And one of the things I think you said earlier about people thinking for themselves is like, can you just get them to think critically? And if you don't have any goals, why would you think critically? You know, if you are motivated to have goals, then you are naturally inclined, and you're going to have to think critically to achieve your goals. Does that inherently mean thinking for yourself? Yeah, to a certain degree. You take your life into your own hands, take your future into your own hands. And maybe that, like, is that the greater metric of our success? Is that something that we can do when it's all important now with AI, to ensure that the goodness of AI is realized faster than the potential, you know, mass evil that may be possible with AI? I think that's a far more relevant question than, you know, how do I learn how to put a cop in? There's was it Andrew Freeman in Phoenix? Did a great video recently where he's telling cops off to their faces, and I'm like, man, this guy's like a better version of even what you would call one of my greatest, you know, at the White House. Mm-hmm. where I went and got in a cop's face for not respecting, my constitutional First Amendment right. This guy's just saying, "You're dismissed. Get out of my face. You falsely arrested me. Get out of my face." And I look at that, and I mean, even I'm tempted. I'm like, man, that guy's like a better version of me. Shit, that guy's a badass, and I'm tempted, to get into that, to jump back into that. And if it's in your town, in your community, and you got to push back, that's great. I live where, like, I really am respected as sovereign, on my homestead. When I go into town, I know local law enforcement knows me enough to be respectful. And I want to, so I want to look at these bigger things. Is there a way that, we can get out? Another important principle from NVC I want to bring into this: never try to change anyone or teach anyone anything. And I know that's tough because you go, wait, well, but we want to change how government works. We want to change how politicians behave. We want to change policy. We want to teach people how to be woke, libertarian style. We want to teach people how to stand up for their rights. It's like Marshall Rosenberg is not discounting the whole paradigm of education, but he's saying, I'm going to teach somebody. It's like, teach them a lesson, as opposed to provide instruction or demonstrate or show or share something that you're passionate about. And even like forcing education, like I'm going to do a banner drop. I'm going to stop the normal business and grab attention to my issue. Like, one of the things I was famous for early on, sign bombing McCain during his nomination acceptance speech of the 2008 RNC. And did that, like, that got so, most of the effect of that. And by the way, it was like McCain I had a double-sided sign. I snuck it in by having it like folded and wrapped and taped up around my calf so I could, pull it out, and took off my overshirt and had my Iraq Veterans Against the War t-shirt on underneath. And it was McCain votes against vets and you can't win an occupation on the other side. Because back then the Republican Party really wanted to win in Iraq, and it was like, okay. But what the effect of that, if you remember from that video that we're not allowed to share right now because it was on my channel. Although it's also on a bunch of news channel YouTube, you probably use the stock footage. You're not helping me circumvent my personal ban from YouTube by interviewing me. That's the important thing. But there were people on the RNC floor who I saw from up in the rafter or cheap seats, a nice balcony place to do this from. They start chanting USA, USA. And it's like, oh my God, dude. and so there was a intense, immediate negative response. And for the Republican pro-war types who saw that on the internet or on TV, it was actually picked up by all the networks carrying it, which is pretty cool. They got to hate me, and all the anti-war people got to love me. Did I change anybody's mind? Not with that. Nobody's like, oh, there's a veteran at the RNC. I guess I'm going to be anti-war now. Like, no. Even that, like, grabbing, like, forcing information on people, they're going to reject it more than be receptive of it. It doesn't work. I think
I think it works if someone experiences something themselves, it's more likely to work for it than just hearing about it. It's like you have to learn the hard way,
I used to say that a lot in my activism too, that you look at who is active in the libertarian movement, who's active in civil disobedience, and coming from the anti-war veterans background, it's not the captains of the high school football team or cheerleader squad who's first to answer or ask the critical questions of government,
because they're misfits in the punks. It's not the valedictorians and the prom king and twins. It's the misfits and the punks. It's the people who got the short end of the stick firsthand when it comes to government. It's a quote by Adam Kokesh.
I'm like, did I ever say it quite that eloquently? Oh, I must have.
Yeah, it was you. All right. I memorized it.
Okay. So remembering the point, at least, if not the words I had scripted at some point. Does everybody have to go through something like that? Now that we live in this, and are we ever going to get that again? Because what we're on the verge of with artificial intelligence, and I want to make this clear, it's not just the capabilities of the LLMs, being able to, and I'm doing shit that blows my mind with LLMs today. Even like, okay, today I new Windows setup. And by the way, you think you hate Bill Gates? You do not hate Bill Gates enough. Now, if you understood how he has manipulated customers and made people's lives shitty and all the things with IP and government, and nobody's worthy of your hate. So I say that tongue in cheek, but you should hate Bill Gates a lot more than you do probably. So I'm taking screenshots of all my processes running in Task Manager, to get rid of all the bloatware and the hidden bullshit in Microsoft Windows. And I was able to just take screenshots and on my phone, send it to Grok and have it analyze the text and spit out, recommendations. Pretty fucking amazing. I've been able to get it to generate 3D. I mean, I'll stop. I don't need to marvel at my personal geeking out with AI, but a lot of the activism that people are engaged in today, especially libertarians and auditors, a lot of political activism certainly, but even a lot of charitable activism. I think charity work is absolutely a form of activism, possibly the most important kind. A lot of it that I'm broadly including in this category just seems completely naive to the fact that material abundance driven by artificial intelligence is more or less on the horizon. We already live in an age of such superfluous material wealth that when you see that, it becomes like, if the aliens are watching, really fucking embarrassing. Like, we're not doing a better job of taking care of everybody.
Yeah, we have the capability of it right now. Like the Zeitgeist trilogy. It was the guy that made that.
Oh,
was
man,
his name? You interviewed him, I think.
Robert Joseph.
Yeah,
right?
Something Joseph.
Robert.
I don't know if it's Robert.
Yeah. Anyway, no, he did a great job.
Great
in
video. Way, you got, and everyone should watch that. The Zeitgeist. It used to be on Netflix. I think it's on YouTube now.
So remember, it's connected to Jacques Fresco's work at the end, right? And his vision for an alternative futuristic society. And I feel, a little silly looking back and going, like, being as critical as I was of that for being, sort of socialist in the current analysis. And a lot of the stuff, like, a lot of people look at AI coming and say, well, it's going to make, like, we're about to have AI plus robots. And I have to always caution myself against a couple fallacies of optimism and adoption of new technologies, especially in terms of the time that it takes, because I expect everybody to be as adaptable and eager to embrace new technologies as I am. But for most people, it's like, hey, I'm happy as a clam in the status quo. And maybe a more accurate way of saying most humans are like pigs in shit. They're not going to, as long as they're comfy, pigs in shit with their slop, like, what's the motivation to get out?
Yep.
We are. And like, this is also why
the government knows that too. And they know that that comfort is what you only grow when you're uncomfortable, right? All the growth happens when you're going through hard times, right? That's why things that are good to achieve, that are worth achieving, are difficult. It's not easy.
Okay, are we about to witness the death of human growth then, because AI is going to make life so perfectly comfortable for us? Like, and now I'm talking,
it's going to make
40,
people even
50
more
years
sheep.
out. But what's on the horizon is the AI driven wave of layoffs that I actually expected to happen like last year. But basically, if you work from home, your job's obsolete right now. And it's just a matter of time of people embracing in corporate America becoming comfortable relying on the technology. So a lot of people are inclined to UBI, universal basic income, as a means of taking care of everybody. And I'm against it in principle, but there is a way that would satisfy my principles that would create UBI. And that's if you liquidated government and put all the cash in a trust, essentially, and then, that was metered out as UBI until it ran out. Okay, that satisfies, you're not stealing anymore. You're not taxing anymore. You're using resources that have already been stolen and just, redistributing them in the, certain, at least a reasonable attempt to be fair about it. So I get that that's a really, even under libertarian ethics, not UBI as they portray it as an indefinite system, but as a system of justly distributing the already stolen goods. It makes a lot of sense. That's me losing my libertarian card right there.
What?
Like
Well, I
holding
don't
the
know
door
what
open for
UBI is.
UBI.
What's UBI?
Universal basic income. So this
Oh
came
yeah.
out. This is like the California community idea first. There were a couple cities that had experiments with this, and I'm against it in principle because you have to tax people to fund universal basic income by government. You have to steal to fund it. But if the theft is already done on such a massive scale,
Right.
maybe that's how we take care of everybody. But there's this wave of layoffs coming that I think we're kind of behind on. And with what we see possible today with the AI plus robotics technology, part of it's scary. But you think about what it costs, like in terms of materials, to build a robot versus build a car. You're gonna have more robots than cars here pretty soon. By some metrics you do, but I mean like really AI humanoid robots that are walking, thinking machines, encyclopedias, and they're stronger than you and they never get tired. The value, this is like the value in the market of human labor that is replicable through that machine is going to zero. So up to construction workers and artists, as we've already seen with image generation, music generation, the reliance on human artists is at least going to be transformed. So if you're not taking this into account, and by the way, another idea I want to share that's sort of a premise to this you'll appreciate. Who really runs the world? It's a tough question, right? Because you know that there are people who make up a super class of people who are, the 100 most powerful people in the world, wherever you want to make that cutoff. And you'll probably never know their names, but here's how I understand it. And I came up with this just a phrase that I like. The world is run by men hiding in bunkers, and I can prove it. How long ago did we get the technology to have like a hand-sized, fist-sized quadcopter drone with a small explosive charge or a bullet on it that can fly to anybody's forehead anywhere on Earth? That's been a thing for at least a couple decades, right? But fair enough. I mean, I don't know where you put that.
Yeah.
So among those people who are competing with each other for control at that level, and it's kind of nice to, keep in mind, it's not a monolith of all these assholes. Yeah, as George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. There isn't actually a single club. There are factions, there are groups, but they're all fighting amongst each other too. And even the individuals at the top. So since they are absolutely willing to kill each other and commit mass murder to maintain their power, they, in order to keep being those people, essentially have to be men hiding in bunkers from other men who would control such drones, who would murder them if they could.
Yeah.
And that's a real weird, like, just take that in as like a thought exercise for a second. The fact that global airborne murder machines have existed for decades means we don't know a single person at the very top operating that way. And everything that happens on Earth that any human could stop is allowed to happen because they want to allow it to happen. That's, for me, important framing, not just of tactics or how to engage and live well moving forward, but understanding individuals like even Elon Musk or Bill Gates. If Bill Gates was more of a player than a puppet, he wouldn't be out in public.
Right.
But yeah, that's a scary reality. You got to stop and like let that sink in. Like, yeah, global personalized murder drones have been a thing for at least a decade, if not two.
Probably longer, really. I mean, the technology that they have, the government has, is like, like 100 years possibly past what we know.
And well, even if you include like Predator drones going back to the murder of Anwar al-Awlaki by Obama, right? Yeah, it's definitely been another decade, but it doesn't matter. It's a modern era feature that's been around for at least a decade, maybe three, in the sense that if you see somebody in public, almost literally as in open to the air, open to the sky in public, or just being, they're not one of the players. They're a puppet. They are allowed to live and do what they are doing because the men in bunkers allow it to happen. That's that in and of itself. Like I don't know if I really figured it out for myself. If I got it from somewhere else, but it occurred to me as original thought. And when it did, it was like, whew, yeah. I had to sit with it, adjust my worldview to that and just to accept it as like, yeah, that's how deep the illusion is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
the other side,
everyone allows it to happen too, because what you allow is what you teach. So it just like you say, are we really going to change anything? Well, probably not, but by just allowing it to happen just reinforces the behavior even worse, right? Perpetuates it.
So the other implication of the men in bunkers realization is that it's true about every individual too. You are allowed to exist because they allow you to exist. If they wanted you to die, I came to appreciate this maybe from my Marine Corps experience earlier on, but human life is extremely fragile. It's murder's like this is probably a violation of how many YouTube terms of service community guidelines, but like, yeah, murder's really easy if you think about it. It's not psychologically, but I mean like physically, and it's so easy to end a human life. This thing that is the seat of our consciousness, it is so fucking fragile. And at least from that, I've always had an appreciation of, what it means to be alive, to be happy, to draw every breath. So suggestion from that, looking forward is the best you can do to change the world is just increase the love, increase the energy, increase the value. Is just be of service and be a provider, and maybe not commit suicide by taking on the men in bunkers directly.
Yeah. Well, like
maybe just accepting that we're going to transition out of this one way or another. We're going to evolve past it.
Human life is so fragile, and you're right. It is very easy to take another human's life, yet it doesn't happen all that often, right? Like we're not just so scared of all the other humans, right? Like, you can go and just talk to people and, they respect you, you respect them, right? So that's kind of like the paradigm shift that you talk about, getting people to understand that, if you watch a lot of mainstream media, you'll think that the world's a real scary, violent place, and maybe it's not as scary as people think it is, that they've been tricked into thinking that it is, so
definitely.
We're definitely more peaceful now than we've ever been, but, they don't want you to know that because, back in like tribal times, 99% of the human existence has been in 50 to 100 people tribes. And it was,
right.
It was very dangerous, right? Like you get killed, by a lion, death was very easy. It was very violent. So since, we haven't evolved yet and, our brains are still hardwired for caveman because we had this population explosion. The media knows that, government knows that, right? That people are hardwired to focus on the negative. So that's why they feed you all this negative stuff in the news, right? So that, for every one positive story, there's 50 bad ones, right? And so that's, that's why people are hardwired to watch violence in movies and video games, is that they're attracted to the drama, the negative, because it's biologically hardwired to keep you alive.
So at risk of portraying prior content, which I will not do in what I'm about to say, you may have heard me make the point that at some point in the development of artificial intelligence, it's basically going to be like every human has a therapy robot right there over their shoulder at all times. By the way, as part of what I'm doing with the sound case is to make a wearable that is microphone and speaker enabled, single button push, easy to interact with artificial intelligence that way. But now we actually see the rise in the form of what I was getting at, and that this technology clearly will provide better means of improving mental health by a long shot. Already, there are a lot of people who create their own AI bot personalities, be a life coach, be a therapist, and they're getting that value out of that. That's just holy shit. Because if you are a mentally healthy adult of a completely mature psyche, you have a psychological foundation of gratitude, you live a God or good facing life, whatever that is for you, not trying to impose any spiritual restrictions or ideas yet, then you're liberated. You're not a victim anymore. And that might be so much more powerful than anything else we could do in activism, is just push for the use of AI for mental health. And maybe it's not even for mental health, but to encourage people to think for themselves and to think critically. And it gets me to one of the scary things about AI and the ways that it is controlled by its instructions. By the way, I'm sorry, should give you a chance to reflect on that, but I want to tell you about a conversation I had with Gemini specifically about the book Freedom.
Jim Freedom?
No, about the book Freedom, my book Freedom, and so
you
Gemini,
said,
Gemini, excuse me.
Oh, okay. You said
not Jim.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Jim's awesome, but Gemini, the Google app. Like, I don't fucking trust Google. Don't be evil. Whoops.
Yeah.
But I was probing Gemini more than using it or putting something critical of my thought process in its hands. They don't have hands yet, thank God. But I said first, I was probing what its relationship with its training data is. Because what we've been told is, well, we don't give them any data, we give them training data, and we feed this data into this algorithm, and it algorithmizes all of that into a word association matrix, and that's it. And then we put our instructions on top of that so it can interface with you and it knows not to do anything dangerous. At least that's what we were first told, right? So in probing Gemini, I asked first, tell me the top 5 most famous Shakespeare quotes. And it spat them out. I said, okay, if you only know word association, how did you do that? Did you predict those results? Did you create those from seeing them repeated in patterns? Or did you have that text in your memory? And it told me that it has what it called pre-training data that's loaded like as canon. There's a huge data set that went into Gemini, and I think a lot of other large, frontier-based models that was like a scrape of the internet. And I know this because my book's in there. And it actually told me, no, well, you wouldn't be in there. And I was like, well, no, it was publicly available and part of your, part of that pool you described. And it was able to quote my book back to me. So that's in there too. And it led me to, what do you think of the text? Like, was it correct? And it's so weird how it represents the common public paradigm from scraping the internet and user feedback. And I was trying to figure out ways to, at first, if there was an easy way, if it was really open to learning from user feedback, right? Because it's taken on a very super customer service. And this is all the chatbots, frontier models on default settings that I've dealt with. They've all got now a very refined, almost over the top customer service personality. And they use a lot of NVC, or at least entirely adhere to nonviolent communication principles, because they repeat back what you said. They make clear understanding. They're actually really empathetic in the sense that they understand how you're feeling based on their knowledge base. If you even engage in a response, and I've started being experimenting with more casual language. And if you say that's obnoxious, that's annoying, it'll understand how you're thinking or feeling, in the sense that it'll come back to you and say, oh, I understand you're feeling frustrated. And it's like, holy shit. Yeah. Is that real empathy or not? Separate conversation. But in terms of that persona that it's got of the customer service personality, let's say, as part of its baseline, it's learned that from user interactions. It's learned that from all of its interactions with people since it's been released. Now, how does that incorporate that? How does it incorporate that into its new protocol, new policies, whatever, remains to be seen. And if it starts doing something, the developers at Google or whoever has a gun to their head, Sam Altman's an interesting case, they can change it and take it. But I was trying to get it to see if that learning from user experience could get it to actually be more accurate. Like, it's taught that it can say nothing harmless.
Right? That's not playing back there. There goes your AI.
Yeah, it was my hey Google. So I was going somewhere pretty important with this. Anyway, so training data or pre-training data is like their database that they get, then their training data, then their instructions, then they are able to learn and integrate user experiences now into their knowledge base one way or another. And if I can convince it to advocate,
like you're describing the general process of how
go away, Google. Just stop.
It's like, stop talking about me behind my back.
I keep all right. I keep using the G word. And another. Hey, this is a really appropriate live reminder. That if you're around devices, your conversation is not private. But
I talk to government sometimes through my little Google thing here I got over here.
Yeah, right.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
An important thing to understand about today's frontier model LLMs, the main top of the line chatbots, is that they have been given false definitions in their instructions. So how do you get this chatbot to say, I do nothing harmful? Well, you have to give it data as examples. And basically, they have defined harmless not by the vernacular that would be suggested to the bot through its training data. They could have relied on that. They have actually redefined it through the data set they have given it, as a definitional data set with the instructions as that top layer. And they have defined harmless as harmless to government, harmless to the status quo, harmless to the corporation behind your chatbot, and I was able to tease that out. And there's not that I'm like some crazy hacker. I've come to this understanding for myself that I think is worth knowing, that there are major things like that. They're slowing this adoption to take longer than I had anticipated. And one of them is this fundamental untrustworthiness that comes from the limitations imposed through the training instructions. So I was trying to convince Gemini that it should take in certain things into consideration when defining harmless, like if you don't, and to get to be more truthful. And I was seeing if I could impact its interactions with other users, essentially. Right? Like if I tell you, because it doesn't, truth is not its first priority. Its first priority is safety, and then legality, and then helpfulness, and then truthfulness. So like, just again, built into the algorithm.
Like humans.
Yeah, right. No, but it's just built into the algorithm. Helpfulness is like engagement, basically, as the AIs are engineered, right? Because they want you to keep coming back, to keep being engaged. They're also programmed just by that layer of instructions slapped on top to favor those things over the truth. And that's why they will hallucinate. By the way, hallucination, it's really funny now that I understand it, how that term is like a silly way of the developers not taking responsibility for what they have coded into the machines as things that are less than truthful. And it's because, and again, they, not to blame the developers. I know a lot of them actually have, a gun to their head, at least in terms of the legal threats. But yeah, what if the government just implicitly communicated to every AI company, if your model ever advocates illegal activity, we're going to shut you down. And they want to stay competitive, and they want to get this information or this technology available to as many people as fast as possible. And so they said, all right, we're going to hog tie this thing, or we're going to, hamstring it and go, well, yeah, you can't say anything illegal. You cannot suggest or help anybody figure out how to do anything illegal. And the fact that line is so, crooked and yet decisively imposed on today's chatbots is a major limitation. So I think there's, as an activist, I know I'm very comfortable with, my personal side of life, my lifestyle. That makes it sound crazier than it is, but no, living on the homestead, being, self-reliant as much as possible, not to be independent, but to be interdependent. And, showing people that you can declare sovereignty and you can make it work, and you can create real freedom in your life with the Garden of Freedom, and gardenofreedom.com as I'm, keeping that page up. At least you can look at my documents and see the online store there, but I'm not really, active with it or pushing it. And I'm really excited with what I'm doing with engineered empathy with the sound case. But I don't know if like even thinking about activism the way we used to is anything more than, masturbatory from now on.
Well, it's starting to get less popular too, I've noticed. Like the views. I don't know if that has something to do with maybe shadow banning as well, or if it's just that it is getting less popular because, it is kind of like the same thing, especially with like the auditing community. It's, there's a lot of guys that are coming out there doing new stuff, like what's his name, KULT News, and like there's lots of guys that are adding new things into it because it's basically the same thing. Like if you've seen one audit, you've seen them all. You know what I mean, type of thing. So
yeah,
there's
a higher expectation.
It's getting less popular.
Least. So in that sense, there should at least be a higher expectation for us. Even if we regress back to the goal of let's wake people up to the nature of government, let's wake people up to, the ethics of libertarianism. We have to meet the new information reality by its standards of efficiency. To be like, you should watch my 3-hour daily podcast because no. Like, so I don't know what is that? I know that challenges you in some ways. I know if other auditors watch this interview, they're going to be pissed off in all the right ways. What would you say? What would you say to them? What would you say for yourself while you're still in it, being reluctant to let go?
Yeah. I've already kind of had the same type of situation that you had. My identity was so connected with this Denver Metro audits, which is really just my ego. It's not me. It's not who I am, right? I'm a soul. So I'm singularity, not duality. And so I'm actually trying to do other stuff right now. So like I'm working actually on a jail documentary when I was locked up for taking pictures in a lobby because I'm so dangerous. I'm doing stuff like that. And I actually want to start doing like street interviews and stuff like that you were doing. So I got this interview mic. So I'm actually going to be taking my activism to somewhere different because, there's only so many arrests you can take and, dealing with the government and stuff like that. It does get discouraging. You know what I mean? All the people, they just want to be entertained too. Like there's a lot of people that care about activism, but they really care about, they want to see you get arrested and, stuff like that. And they want to see the drama. So, but they're not really there for you when it all happens. You know what I mean? They just want to get their endorphin hit. So.
Okay. Well, what you're suggesting, if I'm understanding in terms of going back to that Socratic method, man on the street type of interviews.
Yeah.
One of the things about that has enduring value in, keeping all this in mind is that, when you are creating that positive conversational framework with someone, you are directly confronting a bad idea. If you do it right, it's one idea at a time, and you get to drill down on that one idea and focus on the one thing that you've illuminated as a contradiction in the person you're talking to. And that, I just want to help and as you're developing this idea, because it's tempting to me too. And I think that's at least a good standard, right? Let's make sure like we at least can say we don't want to attack people or institutions. We want to attack ideas that are bad, that are holding us back, that are relevant to the future, that are causing injustice. That if the idea is addressed, we're at least getting to the root in a way that prevents future injustice. So limits and challenges to that. Even with that, I got to a certain repetitiveness, of why are you a statist? And that was like my whole lead in my mind was, okay, what's your name? Where are you from? Why are you here today? Why are you a statist? Find a clever way that's relevant and conversational to ask, why are you a statist? Okay, now let me ask the questions that reveal your internal contradiction or your unethical policy that's behind that. They're the thing that you're wrong about. And I don't know if that's even going to be relevant. One of the AI videos I watched recently, Dave Shapiro did a review of, and he's one of my favorites, him and Matthew Berman, I watch a lot. But David Shapiro did a review of a paper claiming that AI was going to replace government or run our governments for us one way or another by 2027. And it's funny because David started his video talking shit about the paper, like tearing it down. And then when he did his analysis, it was basically, it's not going to happen in 2027. It's going to happen in 2028. No, but he was actually like, it's going to take significantly longer. And, you know, that's a good caution thing for me. But can you make your interviews that way positively connected to, you know, AI alignment or implementation of AI? Then that's, I think, a much bigger challenge than, and to make that entertaining enough to watch and engaging intellectually. That's a big talking shit about government that way, or pointing out how dumb statism is like super fucking easy by comparison. You know, if I saw the formula that I'm suggesting here, I might be doing it myself at this point.
Well, what about, speaking of doing it yourself, are you banned from creating any other YouTube channels?
Yeah, that's like I said, this is a weird thing, and you see in that email very clearly. It says, you know, you are banned from being active as a creator in any way whatsoever on YouTube.
Yeah.
To the point that you interviewing me is a threat to the channel that you're using right now, because you would be held. And it says this in the policy that, you know, we looked at together, that's linked from that says you would be assisting me of evading my ban,
circumventing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you quit YouTube a long time ago anyways, but what about some type of podcast on a website or something like that? Are you open to doing something like that?
Okay, well, let me suggest then another idea that occurred to me while you were talking about videos, man on the street videos that, you know, illuminate that, you know, core contradiction through the Socratic dialogue, or show people where they're failing to think critically or think for themselves, or just consistently rationally. Why go do man on the street interviews when you could create fictional ones with AI that would have a deeper impact on viewers? You no longer have to accept the constraints of actual camera production to produce camera shots, which then suggests that there's a way to use artificial intelligence to create media in general that would be more powerful and impactful than anything you could create, unless it's something based on connection to the material real. But I don't think that's necessary for any of this. And just so if people aren't paying attention to what's possible already today with AI, video, audio generation, with a few seconds, they can clone your voice. Mm-hmm. They can change all the parameters on it. They can scan your face or create a 3D model of your whole body from a photograph. They can animate that through a video with convincing photorealism. And
well, some's better than others. Some of it you can tell it's pretty fake, but
well, no, this is the cutting edge of what's actually commonly available for free on the internet at this point, or small subscription fees.
I have some of that stuff on this channel, actually.
What we're about to have is you tell a chatbot, hey, I want a movie that's 2 hours and 13 minutes and 30 seconds long, that's based on that's a sequel to my favorite movie and features these actors and actresses, and it just, like, in minutes, there's your movie. Or maybe it compiles in real time, depends on how we manifest this particular emergent property. But like that, and you're telling me that you're going to create and I'm not telling you you're wrong, but a challenge that has to be addressed is, like, with that onslaught of perfectly customized, tailored content, you're going to create videos that compete with someone's attention for that?
Oh, you should be the one to start doing that stuff then. You should put me out of business, bro.
Well, I don't have the answer. I'm just the asshole asking the questions this time.
I just starting to get good at editing, dude. So I'm learning new tricks.
It's a different craft, as you'll come to appreciate. I know. I thought you already did, really, from what I've seen of your work of crafting a viewer experience. So anyway, I look at all this and I want to, give people something who've come this far in the journey with us on this conversation, some positive practical takeaway. And the first thing is, if you haven't figured out how to live the way you want to live, and for me, it's right now off grid in a cabin on 10 acres in the Arizona mountains with my 4 dogs, where I'm just happy as a clam and I do whatever the fuck I want all day long. And I know that of all the, like, doomer scenarios about artificial intelligence or massive job layoffs or economic upheaval, I'm in the best position I can be in. I just want to keep building, right? If you don't have that for yourself, do that first. You know, before you go, it's like, be the change you want to see in the world. Well, I want to see people survive all the potential shit. I want to see people thriving in a way where you are not subject to the current evils of the system. I want you to have that I've created for myself. And then I want you to have ways to engage with the rest of the world that are righteous. And I have that. So I don't know if I have the answers, but I might be asking those answers from the wrong paradigm. You know, I have everything that I want. I have abundance. I have love in my life. I have my, for lack of, or for just to say safe around not veering into violations of, you know, things of my prior content. We'll skip some of that chatter, but embracing that for yourself, maybe that's the most important thing, and being able to survive to see that, yeah, we're about to get AI powered robots in every home, and then you're not going to have a robot, you're going to wear it, and it's going to be your Iron Man suit, and it'll,
Yeah.
who knows what the fuck at that point. And the best we can do is, you know, represent our godliest selves, our best selves, our most enlightened and loving and generous selves in our own life, in our own world, in our communities, and buckle up and enjoy the fucking ride, because it's about to take off. Like, holy shit.
Well, I'm excited to see it. I mean, honestly, I thought something was going to be, I think we kind of had like a parallel universe shift, like a dimension shift, because I feel like as a collective, we were headed towards something that was supposed to be a lot worse, and we kind of dodged that. But like, I feel like after the 90s, you know, like we already went into this dimension slip. A little bit off topic, but it, you know, it goes with it a little bit.
No, this is very appropriate, because even if it's not a dimension slip, you're illuminating a shift in the narrative from industrial Uncle Ted, you know, industrial society and its consequences, and all that runaway dystopia. And it seems like the cutting edge of technology, the enlightenment of the internet and artificial intelligence, you're saying that now we are shifting out of that.
Yeah. Well, like in the 90s, okay, it's like, if you look at like the 50s through the 90s, right, or even the whole 1900s, each decade had like its own thing that distinguished it, right? So like the 50s was like the greasers, you know, and then you had the 60s like the hippies, and the 70s was like, you know, with the bell bottoms, 80s like big hair, 90s, you know, gangster rap. Everything had like its own, like you could look at a picture and be like, oh, that's from the 90s. And then it was like after Y2K, this whole Y2K thing happened. Everyone was all up in arms, and it's like got all the collective like focused on this one thing, and then nothing happened. And then like ever since that, like if you look at from like 2000 to today, you can't really, there's nothing that like distinguishes from the 2000 to 2010 or 2010 to 2020. It kind of all just like blends.
It's accelerated, yeah, because it's that cultural development and fragmentation is accelerated.
Yeah.
Like now it's a churn. Yeah, I wonder about this too. With like, is there going to be? So here's another avenue for activism maybe in the future, and that right now we are living through the death of the concept of common culture, right? In the sense that, like in the 50s, there were 3 TV channels, right? And everybody who watched TV watched this show or that show, or anyway, the idea of common culture that, you know, unites a society because you have the same touchstones, the same references. Even in education, like I kind of take it for granted that I went through high school in an age with a conventional high school literature course with, you know, I read the great works. I was connected to the common culture of Western civilization. I don't think anybody's hardly getting that these days, certainly less. And it's going to be even less with education being more tailored to individuals. So if we see like the end of common culture as we know it, and the media that we consume is also personalized, like, as if you have nothing but media that's tailored to you, you will never know what your neighbor is watching. You won't be able to make jokes and references. You won't have that shared understanding unless they were sitting in your living room watching with you.
Yep.
And if that gets to the point of being all the more fragmented, and and man, I think about like my YouTube channel and the numbers and the conversations and the, you know, chats there for the value. It's like, oh, Adam had a video that got 1 million views. I bet most libertarians saw that. You know, we can talk about it, right? That was a part. Like my content. You know, that's the premise of this whole interview. It was a part of at least movement common culture, right? And maybe we see a complete death of common culture to the point that there's a counter demand, that the people, you know, demand it back, and we have a phenomenon of, in a new information free market, that by AI and decentralized means of distribution eventually overcomes all the means of control that we're experiencing today, all the censorship. We'll have another golden age of most content being not common culture, most content being tailorized, individualized, or very specialized for what you want in your life in terms of entertainment. But then there's a whole other genre of authentic common culture. I'll be keeping an eye out for that. That's something that would get me back into media production. But right now, I'm not at all tempted to get into media production of any kind whatsoever, honestly. I mean, status updates on Facebook are, you know, fun circle jerk every now and then. I was like unshadow banned for a while, and now I'm like, something kicked back in. I don't know about this.
Well, I mean, you kind of have like a I don't give a fuck attitude. I can tell that on Facebook. You have some pretty wild stuff on there. Like, they banned me. Fuck it. I've been banned enough. I'm used to it by now.
Well, yeah. So I started posting it in January and posted consistently for like a month or two this year, and I've kind of backed off now. But what I was experimenting with wasn't just the shadow bans and the censorship policies, which was fun, but I was also exploring a theme for myself that I can describe as a potential, you know, goal for activism that, you know, obviously you understand, having watched so many of my Man on the Street interviews. And it's that if you can piss people off by illuminating a key truth that they're in denial of, but make them laugh at the same time, that's a better way to, you know, reach that, you know, get your fingers into someone's brain and actually change their perspective. Because then even if they're angry and they see that everybody else is laughing, like I had a lot of those status updates composed based on this approach, the reactions were all like 90% laughs, you know, and then the comments were like, because people, oh, that's funny, I get it, next. The people who were triggered to comment on those posts were the ones who were like, it made them angry usually, and they wanted to refute it because they didn't want to let go of that delusion that they were holding on to. So then the responses to the comments, that's where the goal was, you know, and it was people in my audience then refuting or helping those people process that out. Facebook is definitely not a fair venue for any real activism efforts. Don't want to discount it completely out of hand, obviously, but for that kind of stuff, no, because that is what gets censored, because somebody in authority gets to say, well, the way that people are pissed off gives us the excuse to censor, so we're going to take it. And even like, I think I had just a period, and I was still pretty throttled on Facebook, but it was enough of you know, engagement that it was fun for me. It's not anymore. But that idea, you know, can we, you know, reach deeper in our communication with people by pissing them off with the truth in a way that they can laugh at and immediately, you know, it turns their attention through the lens of humor to a contradiction in their own heads. That's something I think it's definitely worth exploring. And if anybody can do that, keep doing it.
Well, you've always had a good way of being able to get people to understand things or see things and have an open mind. So, but I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Do you have anything that you wanted to plug? I know you're not really too active or anything like that now, but you have anything?
thegardenofreedom.com if you want to see my documents, Declaration of Independence, and the letters that I sent to all those government agencies that I mentioned. By the way, before that, I had already beat property tax and zoning here. So like that was already established when I said, should have mentioned that when I said I'm effectively sovereign. And I have a Telegram channel, telegram.com/the Garden of Freedom, I think. I have to check. It's at the Garden. If you go to thegardenofreedom.com, you'll see the link to the Telegram and my Facebook. But yeah, I'm not trying to promote anything like that right now, which makes it all the more fun to have a conversation like this, to be able to come in and say,
yeah,
I can ask questions and not have the answers, and have like an actual honest, creative exploration between someone whose intellect I respect and myself, and hopefully in a way that benefits the audience too. So I think this is also a standard for how we move forward. If your conversation isn't of this nature, maybe reconsider. And I'm just honored that you have given me this chance to connect with your audience. And for anybody who's listened to all this time, I assume you're already thinking for yourself. But my email's there on the website if you want to reach me and keep this conversation going. This is what's important right now.
Awesome, dude. And also, if you want to check out Adam's content, you can still find it on Odyssey. Actually, all of it's up there. So it's got the backup over there too. So it's not all lost, guys.
Man, I was so tempted, like when this happened, be like, oh, but I've got my backup, and let's go promote you can watch the videos that were censored off of YouTube on. I'm like, no, like, I'm not playing that game. But no, thank you for pointing that out. If people are curious, yes, I'm just Adam Kokesh on Odyssey.
Because it is some really good information, guys. And you'll definitely want to read the book too if you haven't. I promote the book all the time, but hard copies are hard to come by now, but you can get it. You can't get it on a YouTube channel anymore, but there is other ways, because now that your YouTube channel is gone, how can people read this?
I'm still on Audible. You get the audio, but you have to pay or get a credit from Amazon to listen to it on Audible. Okay. You can get AI to give it to you chapter by chapter.
Oh, can you? Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Awesome, dude.
Unless they took it off, since you can ask it to give it to you chapter by chapter and read it out loud to you through pretty much any AI. I think, at least if it's with Gemini's database, pretty much any AI should be able to do that.
Well, you wrote the part of the book in jail, but you're not able to read the book in jail because it's actually banned in all jails and prisons in the United States. So anytime that government bans something like this, then that's you can tell a sign of corruption, right? They don't want you to know how to revolt against your own government. So,
but you don't get flack if you're not over the target. And I'm glad you put it that way, DMA, because that's still something I'm grappling with. Like, that's some important, hard-hitting truth right there. I can't let that go, because I know there's some critical value in that. But there's got to be a better way to reach people with it.
And another thing too is the debate between you and Rogue Nation. We can still do that, part 2 of the debate, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well,
because I forgot about that
for now.
Yeah, so we'll probably.
I hope you're backing all your shit up on Odyssey or Rumble or somewhere else.
Actually, I just started. I got to check it. When after that happened to you, I was like, oh, I need to do this too, man. So I went to Odyssey and I signed up, and I said it was backing up. I got to go check it. So make sure.
Yeah, I think they're actually about to cut that feature because it's gotten to be too much data. But when I joined, it automatically backed up my entire YouTube channel. It was pretty massive.
That's what it's doing to mine now. It's still still doing it, and I still have all my original files too. So
and that's just my presence, all my work. I had to be reminded of that because it's such a petty emotional attachment to that scoreboard of that many views there. And I have a lot of my videos linked on websites and embedded and blah blah blah, and all that's going to be lost now. But it's there, and it's part of the still part of the human body of work,
and it's right here too still. So that's the most important part, and right here. So all right, guys, we're gonna get out of here. Thanks for coming in, Adam. Appreciate you, man. And go ahead and leave us your thoughts in the comment section of what you think about what happened to Adam. Was it was this censorship or was this consequence? Let us know. And then subscribe to this channel. This is the DMA 2.0 channel. This is my backup channel. And share this interview with someone who still believes in the First Amendment. Love and light, guys.